Greetings everyone. Shira here. In today's video I will be talking about the fighter skill tree. The video will be split in 5 different sections. The first section will provide a quick summary of the skill point assignments. If you're only interested in knowing where to allocate the skill points and you would like to skip any further explanation, this section will provide the information you need. The second section will delve into each skill, explaining its functionality, usefulness, and providing examples of how they can be utilized. In the third section, I will guide you through which skill points to assign and in which order. This section will be particularly useful for new players who have a limited amount of skill points available. The fourth section will explain which skill points to set for the fighter class to be used exclusively as a subclass. The fifth section will focus on the short cycle skill, which is arguably the most controversial skill of the fighter class. I will use this section to clear up any misconceptions, and provide guidance on how to correctly set the skill points for this specific skill, based on your goals and needs. So, without further ado, let's begin the video. Section 1. Quick summary. The following picture on screen is the skill points distribution I recommend, mainly if you just have one skill tree available. If you're watching this video to learn more about the fighter class, I highly recommend continuing to watch beyond this section and checking at least the part related with the short cycle skill. Depending on your goals, it may be beneficial to adjust the short cycle skill points distribution in a way that differs from what is shown in the picture. Section 2. Skills Explanation. This section will be divided in 4 subsections. First we will talk about the base class skills. Next we will cover the Knuckle skills. Then we will delve into twin Dagger skills. Finally we will talk about the double Sabers skills. Let's start with the base class skills. All of these skills will be useful regardless of the fighter weapon you are using, and most of them are an essential part of the way this class plays and what makes it unique. Alright, let's then start with the first skill. Overload. This skill is one of the most representative skills of the fighter class. It gives a 20% damage increase on fighter weapons during the duration of the effect, in exchange of an increase of the damage taken. When you activate Overload, you'll notice a visual indicator in the form of an orange aura around your character. Even though the visual aura can be helpful, it's more accurate to check the countdown in your sub-palette to determine if the skill is active. I will continue to explain all the skills that are related to the usage of Overload. Overload Endurance. This skill allows your character to withstand any attack that would normally be fatal, leaving you with 1 HP remaining. It's worth noting that if your character's HP is already at 1 for any reason, this skill will not be able to be triggered. If this skill is activated, the Overload effect will end. Although the ultimate goal in the game is to avoid taking damage, given the fallibility of humans, it may still be worthwhile to invest in this skill, as even the most skilled players are bound to make mistakes and take hits at some point. Overload PP Recovery. With this skill, your character's natural and offensive PP recovery will be doubled when Overload is active. To put it simply, the amount of PP you'll recover through normal attacks and counters will be doubled. Additionally, the amount of PP you'll recover by simply not performing any photon art will also be doubled. This skill was particularly valuable prior to the Stya region patch. At present, the fighter class effectively has infinite PP during down phases, making this particular skill less crucial than it once was. Even though, it can still be worthwhile to invest skill points in this particular skill due to the huge amount of skill points available. Overload Short Cycle. As the 5th section of this video is dedicated entirely to this skill, we will omit any further explanation for now. Overload After PP Preservation. When Overload effect ends, this skill decreases the PP consumption by 75% during 15 seconds. On the other hand, if Overload Endurance is activated due to damage taken, this skill will not activate. During down phases in which Overload is active, This skill can be quite useful in mitigating the penalties associated with excessive PP consumption. Defeat advantage. This skill increases your damage by 15% against enemies that are experiencing physical or elemental down. It's important to note that not every situation in which a boss is immobilized qualifies as a down status. For instance, when Fordo's spin mechanisms are broken and the boss falls, it does not count as a down. Therefore, the damage increase from this skill does not apply in such cases. Defeat PP recovery. This skill enhances your PP recovery rate when attacking enemies that are under physical or elemental down. I recommend keeping at least one skill point in this skill, as investing the first point provides the biggest increase in PP recovery. Once all other necessary skills have been activated, any remaining skill points should be set to this skill, as it can be upgraded up to 15 points. Fighter skip arts. The photon arts of the fighter class consist of two parts that can be highly distinct and suitable for different situations. Without activating this skill, you will not have the flexibility to choose between the two parts of the photon arts. Instead, the first part will be automatically selected, followed by the second part. Once this skill is set, pressing the directional stick in any direction during a photon art will activate the first part, and not pressing any direction will activate the second part directly. This skill is a core aspect of the way the fighter class works and is extremely important to its gameplay. Same art skip attack. If you use the same photon art twice in a row, then follow it up with a normal attack. That normal attack will start on the third step instead of the first. Another art skip attack. If you use two different photon arts, then follow it up with a normal attack. That normal attack will start on the fourth step instead of the first. These two skills are fundamental to the PP recovery of the fighter class. The reason is that the last normal attacks of all the fighter weapons have a higher DPS and PP recovery than the other normal attacks. Using photon arts effectively to optimize the usage of the last normal attacks is a fundamental aspect of the fighter class gameplay. Now that we have finished talking about the base class skills, let's move on to the Knuckles skills. Knuckle Attack Extra. This skill allows, while using the Knuckles, to perform up to 5 consecutive normal attacks. This is one of the skills we will try to trigger by skipping the first normal attacks through the use of the two arts skip attack skills. Knuckle Sway Counter. This skill allows Knuckles to perform a counter attack when the weapon action is used to dodge an enemy attack. Knuckles has the highest damaging counters among all the fighter weapons, which make this skill even more important. Knuckle Sway Counter Plus. By using the weapon action again, this skill allows Knuckles to perform a second counter attack after performing the first one. This skill is just as essential as the previous one. Knuckle Attack Switch. This skill allows the Knuckles to use the fifth step of the normal attacks after successfully countering with a weapon action. Even though this skill may look like a regular normal attack 5, the damage output is significantly higher. The attack switch is categorized under counter damage standards. On the other hand, the regular normal attack 5 is on the same level as the photon arts. Knuckle Attack Alternation. This skill allows to activate a faster version of either the Knuckle Attack Switch or the normal attack 5, depending on whether the joystick is tilted or not. If the joystick is tilted while using this skill, it will activate the long version of either the Knuckle Attack Switch or normal attack 5. On the other hand, if the joystick is not tilted, the short version will be used. Both of these moves have guard frames throughout their entire usage, making them always 100% safe to use. I think it is also worth mentioning that the use of either of these two skills will also slightly decrease your vertical position, what can become a significant issue in certain situations. Another interesting thing to mention is that during the animation of the long version of the Knuckle Attack Switch and normal attack 5, the character will move upwards and then fall. This movement is not purely aesthetic, in fact, the hitbox of your character will also move upward. This means that an enemy attack can perfectly target you during this movement, causing you to lose a counter activation. The attack switch or normal attack 5 has another particularity, which is that it can be cancelled a few frames before its end with a weapon action. Since the attack switch can be buffered indefinitely, in order to take advantage of this property, it can be a very effective strategy to use your photon arts and the attack switch in a specific order. Knuckle Arts Combo PP Save. When using a Knuckles photon art, this skill can reduce the amount of PP consumed by the next photon arts. A total of 3 skill points can be invested into this skill, and each point invested will increase the rate of decrease while decreasing the maximum amount that can be decreased. If the Knuckles weapon is utilized properly, the maximum decrease rate will not lead to any disadvantageous situation. In general, Knuckles will not really want to chain more than 2 photon arts together, which makes the application of all the 3 skill points even more relevant. Knuckle Arts Combo Bonus. With this skill, if a first part of a Knuckles photon art has been used, the reduced PP consumption of the next photon art is doubled. It is important to note that even if it is initiated by performing the first part of a photon art, this skill doesn't apply to the backhand counter. Only the regular Knuckle Arts PP save skill will apply to the backhand counter. Now, let's continue with the Twin Daggers skills. Dagger Attack Extra. This skill allows Twin Daggers to perform up to 4 consecutive normal attacks. It works like the Knuckles equivalent skill, but trading a bit of potency for having a higher PP recovery rate. Dagger Spin Counter. With this skill, when an enemy attack is blocked by using the Twin Daggers weapon action, a counter attack can be performed by using the normal attack button. While this skill is not commonly used, it still has some niche uses, and I recommend applying the skill point. Acceleration Drive. This skill, after executing a photon art, allows Twin Daggers to move towards an enemy by using the normal attack button at a specific timing. It is one of the most iconic skills of the Twin Daggers and arguably the best long-range mobility move in the game. It is a highly useful skill and definitely worth investing skill points in. Dagger Spin Axle. With this skill, Twin Daggers will be able to perform an acceleration drive after using the weapon action. This skill is pretty useful as it allows Twin Daggers to activate acceleration drive faster than by using photon arts. You can even chain them by canceling an acceleration drive with a weapon action, and then activating another acceleration drive immediately after. In general, this technique can be very helpful for enemies that are very far away. Starting with a Hellzeus coat, and then canceling it with a weapon action into an acceleration drive, is a very efficient way to approach a target from a long distance. Twin Daggers Quick Attack. By using the normal attack button, this skill allows Twin Daggers to perform a very powerful close gap attack after using the normal attack 4, or the Photon Blast. The skill can also be used after performing an acceleration drive and pressing the normal attack button with a specific timing. The damage of this skill is remarkably high, making it highly recommended to trigger it as often as possible. On the other hand, the usage of this skill after the acceleration drive will be more for mobility than purely for offense. This is because the waiting time needed to use the skill after the acceleration drive reduces the overall DPS of the skill. Dagger Hitcount Up PP Gain. This skill allows Twin Daggers to recover 15 PP for every 20 hits landed on a target. Since most of Twin Daggers' photon arts hit the target multiple times, the amount of PP that can be recovered with this skill is pretty significant. This skill works even better when Twin Daggers use over crowds of enemies the second part of the photon art called Limber Figure. Because a lot of targets are getting hit, Twin Daggers can get back all the PP used for the photon art. Before starting with the double Sabers skills, I think it would be beneficial to first provide some information about Whirlwind. Whirlwind is an AoE passive ability that hits the targets that are around the double Sabers user. Whirlwind can be at 3 different stages, with each stage dealing more damage than the previous one. It is important to note that when the double Sabers is not selected in a multi-weapon context, the damage of the stage 3 will be the same as stage 2. Furthermore, the overall damage of Whirlwind is also highly reduced. To advance to the next stages of Whirlwind, the double Sabers just needs to hit enemies with photon arts, counters, and normal attacks. The photon blast of double Sabers also has the ability to increase the stage of Whirlwind by 1, which can be incredibly useful for burst scenarios. Whirlwind can also expire if the player doesn't accumulate at least 15 wind stacks every 15 seconds. This means that the double Sabers needs to hit a target at least once every 15 seconds to maintain the Whirlwind effect. On the other hand, the first and second normal attacks of the double Sabers, as well as the Parry another counter, provide fewer than 15 wind stacks each. Therefore, a single hit of these attacks will not be enough to maintain the Whirlwind effect. Also, the dash attack and the ground pound do not provide any wind stacks. Now that the Whirlwind mechanic has been introduced, let's keep going with the double Sabers skills. Saber Attack Extra. Similar to the skills for Knuckles and Twin Daggers, this skill enables double Sabers to perform up to 4 consecutive normal attacks. However, the double Sabers normal attack 4 is designed to prioritize damage and range above other capabilities. Saber Parry Counter. With this skill, when an enemy attack is blocked by using double Sabers weapon action, a counter attack can be performed by using the normal attack button. This counter is highly focused in getting stacks of Whirlwind. Saber Parry another counter. This skill works similarly to the previous counter attack skill, but instead of triggering with a normal attack button, it activates by pressing the weapon action button again. This counter is primarily focused on dealing damage and does not grant a significant amount of Whirlwind stacks. An important thing to note about this skill is that if used after certain moves in the air, before being able to trigger the counter attack, your character will fall a little. If during the fall the character touched the ground, the counter will not be able to be triggered. Deadly Archer. This skill allows, by holding the weapon action button, while holding at least the second state of Whirlwind, to unleash an extremely powerful attack. This skill has a drawback though, as it reduces the Whirlwind stacks to 0. Because the double Sabers have the strongest photon blast among all the fighter weapons, it is advised to always use it for this purpose. In cases where the double Saber is exclusively used for the photon blast, it is recommended to use Deadly Archer in order to consume all of the accumulated Whirlwind stacks. If the double Sabers are used as the primary weapon, it is recommended to only use Deadly Archer for the final burst of a boss fight. Spiral Drive. This skill works in a similar way to Deadly Archer, but instead of using the weapon action button, it is activated by holding down the normal attack button. The total damage of this skill is lower than Deadly Archer, but it lowers 1 level of Whirlwind instead of reducing the stacks to 0. This skill is primarily used before using the Photon Blast while having Whirlwind at stage 3. As the Photon Blast increases 1 level of Whirlwind, it is a good idea to use the stacks for dealing additional damage. Saber Glaze PP Gain. This skill gives 2 PP back each time Whirlwind at level 2 or 3 hits a target. This skill is nice in single target scenarios, but it becomes even more valuable in crowded situations since you receive PP back for each target hit by Whirlwind. This skill has very similar effects to the Twin Daggers skill, Dagger Hit Count Up PP Gain. Saber Wind Extra. This skill allows double Sabers to enable the third stage of the Whirlwind mechanic. The third stage of Whirlwind is extremely powerful, and in most cases, it is desirable to reach it as soon as possible and keep it throughout the entire fight. Section 3. Skill Points Assignment. Depending on the weapon you are aiming to start with, the order of the skill points assignment may be different. Therefore, I will provide an example for each weapon of the fighter class. The following picture on screen describe the order of the skill points to set for Knuckles as a start point. Generally, we begin by activating the fighter skip arts, followed by the counters and arts skip skills. Next, we focus on the regular weapon skills, followed by the overload skills, and finally the down advantage skills. After completing the aforementioned steps, we can activate the skills for the other weapons, and then distribute any remaining skill points to match the picture provided in Section 1. This picture illustrates the skill points assignment path that should be followed for twin daggers. This other picture illustrates the skill points assignment path to be followed for double sabers. Section 4. Skill points for subclass. Now, let's delve into the topic of the fighter class in relation to the subclass system. When used as a subclass, the fighter class can provide significant utility to other classes due to its highly specialized nature. The fighter class can enhance mobility, provide evasion-based counters, offer single-target options for less specialized classes, and provide passive skills like defeat advantage when used as a subclass. However, it's worth noting that when using a subclass, the damage dealt is reduced by 9.09% compared to the main class. The picture on screen displays the skill points distribution that I recommend. Essentially, we will activate all skills that do not contain the phrase, main class only in the description. In total, you will have more skill points than necessary to activate all skills that can be used as a subclass. Furthermore, you will have 3 additional skill points that you can allocate to any skill that is main class only, thus augmenting your battle power even further. Section 5. Short cycle. Without further ado, let's dive into the last section of this video. The short cycle skill enables the fighter class to decrease the cooldown of overload in exchange of reducing its duration. Upon examining all of the short cycle values, the first thing we notice is that the uptime is not completely equivalent across all of them. Considering the relation between cooldown and uptime, we can observe that certain short cycle states provide a slightly increase in uptime compared to what would be expected. It's natural to assume that the state providing the greatest increase in uptime would be the most advantageous and the one we should aim to use. However, this thought process is entirely incorrect. Indeed, the marginal difference resulting from the prolongation of the most advantageous states is practically imperceptible. In practice, an efficient use of overload can result in a much more significant damage increase, potentially several seconds. Now a good question to ask would be, what constitutes an efficient use of overload, right? There are several factors to consider for using overload correctly, including physical and elemental downs, the photon blast state, boss phases, and total uptime. These are among the most crucial factors to take into account. Also, while the fighter skill, overload after PP preservation, can be useful in certain niche situations, it does not typically result in a significant increase of damage. Instead, it is generally more of a quality of life improvement. Therefore, the presence of this skill is typically not a significant factor when choosing a short cycle state. Due to the significant differences in uptime and cooldown among the various states of overload, each state can be the most appropriate for a specific type of content. This means sadly that the fighter class needs 7 separate skill trees in order to achieve optimal effectiveness. On the other hand, some states of overload have been revealed to be statistically more efficient than others. The following list represents, to the best of my knowledge, the most efficient states of overload that I have discovered so far. This classification may be subject to change in the future, depending on the direction the game's content will take. We will then continue explaining briefly the advantages and flaws of each one of the states. 2/5. This state of overload achieves the most optimal synchronization with the photon blast. It produces a slight overload delay when used at the beginning of a fight, but a slight advance when used in synchronization with the photon blast. This state has been so far the most effective for a wide range of content, particularly for soloing a lot of purple trigger quests. Additionally, using a weapon that accelerates the charge of the photon blast can further enhance synchronization for this specific state. 1/5. This state provides an optimal combination of an extended overload duration and a photon blast synchronization. However, using overload at the beginning of a fight can result in a significant delay in the photon blast synchronization. On the other hand, when used in conjunction with the photon blast, both abilities can achieve near perfect synchronization for the next use of both. This state is especially beneficial in party situations and urgent quests. Its extended duration makes it highly effective for break status and physical to elemental down chains. 3/5. While similar to the 2/5 overload state, this state offers greater flexibility in adjusting the first overload activation, albeit with a reduction in uptime. However, it also provides the highest total uptime among all overload states, making it advantageous for certain content where the photon blast cannot be efficiently used in conjunction with overload. In general, the 2/5 state is usually preferred, since the uptime is longer and the additional flexibility is not always crucial. 0/5. Given its very long uptime, this state is especially well suited for situations where only one overload activation is possible. In certain contexts, this state can be viewed as a significantly delayed variant of the 1/5 state, and may be useful for content that features very long down phases that are sporadic. At this point, the subsequent overload states are generally less commonly used, although they still have their own unique applications. 5/5. Due to its very low cooldown, this overload state is by far the most flexible of all the states. However, it also has the lowest uptime in every situation. As a result, it is not ideal for break status or physical to elemental down chains. It has also a very poor synergy with the photon blast charging. That being said, this state would benefit the most from the skill overload after PP preservation. Therefore, it is worth considering this state in situations where the niche usage of the skill may be useful. 4/5. Due to its low uptime and poor synergy with the photon blast charging, this overload state is rarely used. However, like all overload states, it still has niche applications. For instance, during a PSE burst, if overload is activated in order to defeat the boss of the burst, if a PSE burst encore is triggered, overload would become available just in time to defeat the boss of the second burst. Ultimately, this state's description serves as a general way to assist in the selection of the optimal short cycle for a particular piece of content. It is crucial to consider all relevant parameters and customize the approach accordingly for each unique case. Well, here concludes this video. While it ended up being longer than anticipated, I hope that it has provided you the information you were seeking regarding the fighter class skill tree. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Take care, everyone.